I am really excited about today's video. It's a collaboration with another YouTuber whose name is Drew, and his channel is called Playing with Sticks. I'm particularly excited because it's about a favorite subject, Alaska. Drew lives in Alaska with his wife May and their 2 young boys, and they travel in a tiny teardrop trailer. Drew and I have communicated over the last year or so, and we recently had a Zoom call wherein I started asking him questions about Alaska that I get from my viewers. And then Drew asked if I wanted to collaborate on a video about Alaska. So I wrote up the questions and I answered them, and my answers are going to be on his channel, and his answers are going to be here right after I stop talking. But first, I want to tell you one more thing about Drew. He and his wife have a passion project. They are planning to leave in the fall and fly to northern Thailand, where they're going to work with a nonprofit and working with at-risk children. They'll come back to Alaska in the summertime. They're going to fund their trip with revenue from their channel, but also there's a company in Canada that makes one of his favorite blankets. It's called a Sorrison blanket. It's a puffy blanket. And he did a video on it not too long ago, and I will put a link to that where he talks about this passion project. But the company reached out to him and said, we will not only help fund you in your passion project, but we will put 10% of the proceeds that come through your channel from blanket sales. We will also contribute that to your efforts. So I encourage you to, if you need a blanket, go over there and take a look at that. I will also put a link to his blanket in my video description. So here are the answers that Drew made to the questions I posed to him. And I think that you're going to get a lot out of this if you're either planning to go to Alaska or if you are going back to Alaska. He has so convinced me that we have to move up our plans to return to Alaska and maybe do it in the next couple of years. I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, welcome. I'm Drew. Welcome to Alaska. These topics today, these questions you have, I'm gonna try to keep them short and concise, but man, I could go on forever about this stuff. This is the stuff that gets me excited. So let's get right into that first question. So I'm going to talk a little bit about going through Canada, but primarily I want to talk Alaska. This is my backyard. This is the place I know. And I just want to start off by saying, those of you with a small van, camper trailer, whatever you're taking up the highway, you're in a much better place than that person who gets in the plane in Seattle and lands in Anchorage. Now, don't get me wrong, that's still a great trip in Alaska. But if you were to fly up here and not make that trip, getting up into the Yukon, out into that just open area, you don't understand how isolated you are here in Alaska. You don't know how rugged it all is until you've made that journey. Let me get this, I need to cover this up really quick. Put a little raincoat, maybe put this raincoat on here and put something else over this. It's coming down pretty hard. So your first question for Debbie was, when you drove up the Alaskan highway, did you crack a windshield? Did you blow out a tire? Were people friendly and helpful? Did you ever feel unsafe? Unfortunately, I would say probably all of the above. I made it all the way to the Yukon. I got to the Yukon and there was a giant hole in my tire on the highway. I pulled over, it was as large as a pen. I was able to stick a pen inside the hole and the air just went completely out. Within minutes, an amazing Canadian truck driver, like all Canadians, pulled over alongside the road. He put a tire plug in there. If you're not familiar with a tire plug, I'll throw it up on the screen here. It's basically like tar and you shove it in the hole and it just kind of seals it. He plugged that up, put air back in my tire, and I was off. And what's funny is I forgot that plug was even in there. I had it in there the entire life I owned the car. So I think I sold the Jeep like 5 years later and it still had that plug in it. And what I found living in Alaska, most of us have what we call the Alaskan windshield. Why that happens is, unlike the lower 48 where they use salt in the winter for the roads, because it's just pure ice and snow up here all winter, if we were using salt everywhere, all our vehicles would be, you know, just rusted out. So we just use gravel. And what they call gravel up here can range from fine sand all the way up to a rock. So just be careful when following behind a larger vehicle. Be careful when passing or being passed. So I kind of forgot to touch on the did you feel safe part. And I would say the majority of the time, yes. Like I tell people, boondocking up here in Alaska, I feel safe, I feel good. But I will say, you know, you gotta go with your gut, be aware of your surroundings. You guys know this, like there's people out there, if they're running from the law or they're just running from life, a lot of times they head north. And they go north as far as they can till, you know, the population starts thinning out. You know, there's a few interesting characters up there. But again, I wouldn't say don't be nervous about it. Just be aware of your surroundings. You know, when I'm pulling into a campsite or I'm, you know, going anywhere up here, you kind of just look around and you can feel the atmosphere, the vibe. Is it a family vibe? Is it a party vibe? And then you can make a decision if you're gonna stay or go on. But unlike other places in the country, there's so many options here, you never feel tied to a spot. If something doesn't feel right, you can move on and find something just as nice 5 miles down the road. One thing I think I should mention that it just came to my mind, when I'm traveling the Alaska Highway, I would suggest getting roadside assistance. And you know, so we have like Geico for here in Alaska, but it's nice, it's affordable at like $7 for 6 months, but I think they only go like 20 miles. So just check what your roadside assistance can actually do for you. I would suggest AAA. We use their mid-tier plan. It used to be called Silver. I think now it's called the Plus membership. And what that does, it gives you towing up to 100 miles. And you know, back in the day when we used to drive the highway, it was about 160 miles at the longest point between 2 gas stations. But now I think it's about 100 miles. And so you wouldn't need to go up to that premium tier, just kind of stick in the middle, and that'll get you gas if you ran out. They'll change your tire, they'll tow you if your vehicle breaks down. That just gives you a great peace of mind. Another thing worth mentioning are those frost heaves. Now you've probably read about them. I see all over the forums people are nervous about them. And to me, they're more just fun. It's like a roller coaster ride.
Our first hot frost heaves, woo!
The only time I would caution against them really is if you're pulling a trailer or if you're riding behind someone with a trailer. And why that is each frost heave, the trailers start going a little more and you kind of get this momentum. And before you know it, the trailers are slamming down and I see doors come open. And now stuff's just falling out all over the highway. I've had that, been behind that multiple times. So just be careful when behind someone and when pulling. So I love this question, and that is, do you reserve campsites along the highway? Now, I'm just going to touch on Alaska here, and for me, the answer is no, or rarely. I love having the freedom to just go wherever I want, stop at a boondocking site, pull over on the side of the road. There's boondocking sites all over Alaska. If they are filled up, you just move on to the next one. If they're still filled up, just remember you can pull to any roadside pull-off in Alaska and spend the night there. It's legal. It's pretty neat. It's not the most ideal thing, but it'll get you to your next site the next day. Now, there are a couple places that I think are a must for reservation, and that is the Russian River Campground on the Kenai River. So if you're heading in that area, make sure you get a reservation like crazy in advance. Like Alaskans, they typically will do it in January before that next summer. And then the other one is Denali. When you're heading up to Denali, if you don't get a reservation, you're going to be forced way outside of the park and you're going to have to commute each day in and out. And that, it just puts a bit of a damper on the trip. Other than that, the only other time you may want reservations are weekends. And why that is because Alaskans flood the campsites over the weekend. So the trick I would suggest to you, instead of getting reservations, just make sure you get to every campground, if you're staying in a campground, at Friday morning. But again, I wouldn't do reservations if it was me. This is just me, because there's nothing worse traveling anywhere in the world, not just Alaska, when you meet up with some great people. People is what makes this, right? Travel's great, Alaska's beautiful, but it's the people you're going to meet. And if you meet like-minded people and they're headed up towards Denali, but your itinerary has you heading down the Kenai for the next couple weeks and you're stuck into reservations, there's nothing worse than having to make that decision. Like, do I go with my plan or do I go with these guys? Do I lose out on a bunch of money because of my reservations? you just don't want to be put in that spot. So that's why I would highly suggest just keeping it to a minimum if you can. So a great question you guys asked Debbie was, did you disperse camp or boondock when you're out here? So this is dry camping, right? It's free camping, no electricity, just out in the woods. This is what we do. Our channel is devoted to it. Boondocking is everywhere in Alaska, and I would suggest iOverland. It's an app. If you haven't used it, it's probably the most up-to-date for Alaska. We have a video Debbie will link in the description about how we find boondocking sites that you can't find online, not even in iOverland. Great tips for getting you your own secluded spot so you can have your own Alaskan backdrop. I like this question. Did you take kayaks or bikes? So I would say if it was me, if you were going to take one of the two, that's so tough. If it's Canada, I would say a bike. Canada has some of the best mountain biking around. They're very bike-friendly country. Alaska, again, I might get hammered in the comments, we're not the most bike-friendly state. There's not a lot of bikers here. You have to be very aware of cars because they're not aware of you. We have very small shoulders, so our biking is mainly around, single track trails, downhill biking. It's great. We do have some great ones, but we are really a kayak state. If you can fit that kayak in there, great. If you can't, we are inflatable kayak fanatics. And you can rent gear when you get down to these local areas too, to add to your experience. So do you take the ferry or not? I think, not just from my frugal mindset, but I don't think you want to take the long haul ferry. It's great, but that's why you have your van. You have your van to do a road adventure, but I think you have to take the ferry. It's just an incredible experience. And so I would say do a small segment, and a segment that allows you to do a round trip without going back on the same road you already drove. So I have two for you that I just love. The first one is you start in Anchorage, work your way down the Kenai Peninsula to the very end, to Homer. And when you get to Homer, you can take a 9.5-hour ferry over to Kodiak Island, which is it's just incredible. It's May and my favorite place in all of Alaska. There's enough to do just on that island. You would never even need to see mainland Alaska. From there, you take, I think it's about a 17.5-hour, 18-hour ferry back to Whittier. And then from Whittier, it's just a 1.5-hour drive to Anchorage, allowing you to completely bypass going back up the Kenai Peninsula again. Now the second trip, and this is a fun one, but this is one you're going to hit gravel. This is where your chances of blowing a tire, some window damage, things like that will increase a bit. But I've seen Sprinter vans do this. I've seen 4-cylinder cars do this. You can go up from Anchorage to Denali. Once you're done visiting Denali, you're going to cut across the Denali Highway. And man, there's Tangle Lakes and just these beautiful streams and lakes, and it's like untouched Alaska. Once you hit the other side, then you're going to work the highway down through Tok, down to Valdez. Did I say Tok? I didn't mean Tok, I meant Glen Allen. Tok's a little bit north. Once you get down to Valdez, there's no more road again. You hop on the ferry to Whittier. And then from Whittier, you drive back up to Anchorage. And the beauty of this route is you get to see all this new part of Alaska, but you don't have to redo the route that you initially did on your trip up from Canada. It's starting to get wet a little bit again. I'm gonna hide back in the trees here for the next segment. Oh man, that was a little deeper than I thought. I'm gonna set down my bag quick and I'm gonna hit that next question for you. So you guys asked Debbie what excursions she enjoyed up here. I'll let her tackle that one. I'm just gonna say, if you have the money, do it all. Do whatever you can come across. We don't have a lot of fly-by-night operations here. Most of the excursions that are here are Alaskan families that have been here generation to generation. They cost a lot of money, but the chances of seeing wildlife here are so much higher than anywhere else. So if you do a Kenai Fjords tour, it's a guarantee. You're going to see everything. If you do a bear viewing tour, you're going to be right with those bears. I mean, they're going to be uncomfortably close to you. So I'm just going to tell you one that I love. It's a little secret of ours. If you go down to Homer, you can get a boat ride on the Danny J over to the island of Halibut Cove. And it's a neat island. It's all lined with boardwalks, and in between the boardwalks are little stores. It's an artist community, and these artists live there, and they make their paintings and their shirts and their little gifts, and that's how they're living, selling it to us. And then they have one restaurant on the island, and it's called the Saltery. This is good food. Now, if you go down there, get a reservation for a table, you get the ride on the Danny J over to the island for free. So it's a free round trip, and the meals aren't that bad. I want to say they start in like the upper 20s. Great food.
Bon appetit.
You're sitting out looking all over the harbor. Again, you're going to see all these natural animals playing right below you as you eat. It just doesn't get a lot better than that. So as I was walking over here, I was reading the questions, and the next one was asking Debbie, did she enjoy what she took up here? Like, what rig did you take? And when you came home, was it the right choice? And I think she did make the right choice. So I would say the more you can be self-contained in a van or in a camper, making your own meals, having your nice comfy bed, things here are really overpriced, and then when you pay the money to go and stay at these places and eat at these places, you might walk away thinking, oh wow, that was a lot of money for that. Really, for us, we take a 4x8 teardrop trailer, tow it all around the state. We take Scamp fiberglass trailers. We own a 13-foot vintage trailer. When it comes to just getting around, even our 4-cylinder can get us to 90% of the state. Your vans, you have Sprinter vans all over here. They're getting almost everywhere. But basically, I would be more about a cozy spot to eat and sleep more than worrying about, can my vehicle get through this, because most vehicles can. The two that come to mind to me are out of Skagway, you have the Chilkoot Trail that goes up into Canada. Great historic trail around the gold rush, if that's something that interests you. Another one, probably the best, arguably the best trail in Alaska, and that's Kasugi Ridge. That is right outside of Denali National Park. Another great long trail that folks love to do, it's called the Crow Pass Trail. That's down in Girdwood. Why I love that trail is it's a quick ascent to the top from the Girdwood side. You wouldn't even have to go the 21 miles. Just the first 5 miles, you're walking up above tree line, getting up into Arctic tundra, looking over into a valley where there's glaciers and bears. Then you can hike back down, get in your car, go into Girdwood, and you can be in the most northern rainforest in North America. And in that rainforest, you can get on the hand tram and go across, all self-propelled by you. You can head up to Hatcher Pass, and in Hatcher Pass you have Reed Lakes. A lot of these trails I'm mentioning are right in South Central Alaska. And you'd think it's because I live in this area, but I think that's why everybody lives in this area. There is a lot of beautiful trails here. Not that the rest of Alaska isn't beautiful, I just think in South Central, the trails are more densely packed. You're going to find more of them. You're going to find a lot of great opportunities. So cell phone connectivity, you would think it'd be our local carrier. I used to say GCI was best. My buddies who have AT&T, so I have GCI, they tend to have better service than me, especially through South Central Alaska. But just know, whatever carrier you have, if you have a GSM phone that accepts SIM cards, you can come up here and get a prepaid SIM from all of our providers. So what I want from you guys now is for you to come over to our channel, Playing with Sticks, because you will see Debbie on there answering the same questions we just answered. But Debbie from She to Me, she just made that trip in 2019 to Alaska in her Sprinter van. So her answers are going to be fresh and timely. And I just want to thank Debbie. Thank you for letting us on this channel of yours. Thank you, Debbie's community, for letting us show you Alaska. We hope you have safe travels and journeys in 2021.
It's funny, after watching Drew's video, because I had already done mine and watched his, and we had a lot of commonality there, and it was interesting. So now what I really would like you to do is go over to his channel to see my responses, because I really want people to subscribe to his channel and support him. He puts out great information on all kinds of subjects, like how to stay warm, and just lots of good tips. So please go over there, support him, and throw in your extra comments and whatever else you can come up with in his comments. So thanks, Drew, so much for asking me to collaborate with you. I wish you so much luck in your passion project and look forward to meeting you in person the next time we're in Alaska.